My name is Jack Thorne. For over 3 years, I've been running from the SCP Foundation. This is my story. It rained all night, and as the sun crept up on this dark Wednesday morning, the rain persisted. As I sat on the edge of the bed, cigarette in hand, I could hardly bring myself to remember a time when it wasn't raining. This tiny hotel room didn't have anything except a bed, a closet, and a tiny bathroom. The morning sun streamed in through half-broken window shades, dimmed by the pouring rain. I stared at the floor as the shadow cast by the bed danced with the tiny shadows cast by rain droplets. I stared at my boxer shorts, not waiting for anything in particular, as the woman who'd spent the night in my hotel room began to stir. "Can you put some coffee on?" her voice croaked out. I didn't move. I didn't even remember her name. "Can you hear me?" A bare foot kicked me from beneath the blankets and snapped me back to reality. I stood up and walked over to the closet, quickly dressing it and collecting my things. "What's your name anyway?" she asked as she sat up, rubbing her eyes with the backs of her hands. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my suitcase and melted into the shadow cast by the bed. The woman screamed. I had become very accustomed to this reaction. Whenever I'm melting or traveling through a shadow, I can't feel anything. It's how I imagine people feel when they're on water slides. I'm just allowed myself to relax as a stronger force pulls me forward. My body turns black and fades as it pours itself into the shadow, taking anything I'm holding with me. Moments later, I melted through the roof of the parking garage and fell onto the concrete beside my car. One of these days, I'll have a convertible and will land right in the driver's seat. I turned the key, and the car roared to life, coughing and spluttering as I put the gear into reverse and pulled my way out of the dingy hotel and back into the open road. Driving along the lone highway is the only time I feel any solace. I feel safest at 60 miles per hour, putting distance between myself and the city I'd just been. I once thought I could settle down. I even met someone I thought I was in love with. But when you're running from the SCP Foundation, to stop means to die. I contemplated my next move as I pulled off the highway into a rest stop for gas. My car chugged and heaved as it dragged itself to a pump and coughed out smoke as I turned it off and stepped out. "That car's dead," a small voice called out from the other side of the gas pump. I pushed the nozzle into the car and started filling it with gas as I looked around the pump to see who was talking. A very thin girl was sitting on the ground, leaning against the front wall of the gas station. Her light blonde hair hung in front of her face, her arm rested casually on her knee. She was wearing blue jean shorts and a dark-colored vest. "She's still got plenty of life in her yet. This old girl has never let me down," I replied, disgusted by the gum she was chewing and smacking on. "She has 10 more minutes left, then she'll fail you." The girl stood up, brushed off her shorts, and walked towards the car. "Whoa," I said, stepping back. "Where do you think you're going?" "With you. I've been waiting," she replied, as she casually opened the car door and sat inside. I finished filling the car and went to pay the clerk, all while staring at the blonde girl sitting in my car. "Buy adhesive bandages," she called out from the car. "You know her?" I asked the clerk. The board worker handed me my change while shrugging. "Arrived here before you did. Walked here out of nowhere, then just sat her ass on the ground outside." Thanking the clerk, I strode outside, flung open my car door, and sat back in the driver's seat. "I'm going to give you 3 seconds to get out of my car, or I'm dragging you out," I said, trying my best to control my rage. The girl didn't even look at me as she casually whispered, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." And she made a fake screaming motion with her hands before leaning against the car window, seemingly bored. "I'm going to count to..." I never got to finish my sentence. Suddenly, the sound of bullets peppering my car exploded from behind me. "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit!" I screamed as I tore out of the gas station, careening onto the road. A long black car sped behind me, chasing me. A man hung his torso out the window with an automatic rifle in his hand. The gun lit up as it sent bullets flying at my car. The engine exploded, sending smoke barreling out the back. I ripped the steering wheel to the left, screaming as the car flew off the road. The girl simply looked bored as she braced herself by pushing her hands against the roof. The car landed in a ditch on the side of the road. The hood mashed into the ground. Smoke poured everywhere. I cuffed as I pushed off my car door. I walked around the car and ripped off the passenger door, pulling the girl out and helping her stand up. I noticed my forehead stinging, and where I reached up to touch it, it felt blood gushing out of a cut. "Did you buy the bandages?" she asked, her eyebrow raised. "No, I didn't. And who the hell are you?" I'm Sam. Now let's get the hell out of here. I grabbed Sam's hand and started running through the grass and into a forest. Bullets zipped past as we ran, clipping into trees around us. I could hear roughly 4 men running behind us, and they were gaining speed. I looked around the forest but couldn't see anywhere to run where we could find cover. Do it now, Sam yelled. For a moment I couldn't think, but then I had an idea. I threw myself through the air at Sam, pulling her close to me. I then angled my body as I fell and concentrated. Sam and I both fell through the shadow cast by a tall tree, melting through the ground until we stopped falling a few feet down, suspended beneath the surface. We hung, suspended underground like a spoon that's fallen into a bowl of jello. We looked up through the dirt at the men who were standing in the forest, looking around, searching for us.
Where the hell did they go?
A fat man smoking a cigar asked.
We'll get them one way or another,
a man with a long nose replied. Suddenly, Sam turned toward me. She then grabbed my shirt, placed her feet against my chest, and kicked with all her strength, rocketing me back to the surface where I emerged from the ground and landed with a thud on the ground. The fat one immediately brought the butt of his gun down and cracked it into my skull, rendering me unconscious. I woke up a few hours later. My head hurt terribly, and I was sitting tied to a chair in the middle of a huge warehouse. Wires were coming out of my head and hanging down my shoulders and down my back. Blood was all over my shirt.
Well, looks like we went fishing and caught ourselves an SCP freak.
The long-nosed man emerged from the darkness with a toothpick in his mouth and a wicked grin on his face.
You're not the freak we were looking for, but you're going to help us get her,
the man continued, stepping close enough for me to smell his foul breath.
You don't need to tell us where she is. You just have to think about her and we'll find her. We have our own freaks that help us find freaks like you.
My mind was fuzzy, but I knew what he was doing. If I allowed Sam to cross my brain for even a second, they'd be able to track her. The fat one emerged from the darkness behind me, grabbing my right hand and forcing out my index finger. The long-nosed man pulled the toothpick out of his mouth and carefully slid it under my index fingernail. The pain was unbelievable. I felt the fibers of the delicate skin under my nail lifting, heard the cracking as my nail was lifted up, saw the blood pool under the nail then dribble onto the floor.
Think about the girl,
he screamed as I closed my eyes, biting my tongue so hard it throbbed. I thought of everyone I could, desperately trying to keep her out of my mind. I thought of my mom, I thought of my grandmother, I thought of the guards that threw food at me through my cell door at the SCP Foundation. Lastly, I thought of Daisy. I thought of the moment she disappeared into dust right in front of me. I thought of the pain I felt the moment she vanished into the wind. I choked back a tear, right as I felt a mist of liquid sprinkle against my face and heard the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. I opened my eyes, my vision swirling as I came back to my senses. I must have been seconds away from passing out. I looked around. Both men were lying in pools of blood. Sam was standing over them, her hair tied back and holding a silenced pistol. She then stood over me and started unscrewing a bolt that was holding the wires onto my head. "You didn't give me up," she said with a smile as she collects bolts in her hand and pulled wires out of me. "I should have," I growled back. "You gave me to them." "I'm sorry about that," she said as she gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "They were going to burn down the forest to find me. I either had to give you up with the knowledge that I'd come to rescue you, or stay safe while they burned the forest along with 496 animals, 12 humans, and 2 homes." "Well then I guess you made the right call," I muttered as I splat out a tooth and shakily stood up. "But how did you even know? How do you always know what's going to happen?" She looked at me sternly, her eyes burrowing into mine. "What's with your little shadow trick, huh? You want to explain every weird, scary thing about you? Or how about we just stop with all the stupid questions and get going?" She was right. I'd been an idiot to get so emotional over some light interrogation. I must be getting soft in my old age. "Can I ask at least if there's a way we can get the hell out of here?" Her stern expression turned into a smile. "That, sir, is the right question." With that, she put out her hand. I took it, and together, we ran.